Hello and welcome to today's Wellness in Hospitality series. Today, I have a very special guest, Brian Proctor, founder of the Leeds Hospitality Group and the host of the Tuesday Thanks podcast. Brian, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining.
Well, my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Brian, you have a fascinating career. You've been in the industry for 40 years and then you founded the podcast. You're hosting the podcast, the Tuesday Thanks podcast. So tell me a bit more about yourself.
Well, as you said, I've been in the industry a long time, always in the hotel and hospitality side of things. Went to school for hospitality and had a tremendous career with a lot of big companies, and ended up in 2020 during the pandemic, saying, "Okay, I was going to step back from the daily grind of the corporate world, as a lot of people did." And set up Leeds Hospitality as a consulting firm. And then about 2.5 years ago, I kind of transitioned into also hosting, as you mentioned, Tuesday Thanks, my podcast, which is a podcast where I interview senior hospitality leaders about their journey and provide them with the opportunity to thank those people who have helped them along the way. And it all stems back from during the pandemic, we, noticed we were losing a lot of good people, and I would see online and things, testimonials to people that have unfortunately passed away. And I said, well, that's great, but they're no longer around to hear that. We should start telling people while they're around how much we appreciate them. So I made a commitment on my personal page on LinkedIn to thank one person every week for 52 weeks. So 1 year, I was going to thank 52 people. Now, I'm an operations nerd, so I had my Excel spreadsheet, all the places I'd worked, all the people I wanted to thank, all the people I couldn't thank because they had taught me what to do and things, but in a bad way. So I didn't want to mention them, obviously. And I did that for a year. And then after a year of doing that, on the 53rd week, I got a lot of emails, texts, phone calls. Brian, where's your post? Those were so much fun. And I said I'd do it for a year, and that was it. And I just happened to do them on Tuesdays. There was no magic to this. I didn't have a plan. It was just a Tuesday thing. And so then I started thinking, and I was asked to be on a podcast, a great podcast, Steve Turk's Hospitality Mentor.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's a great show. He does a great job. I call him Mr. Miami. Um, and he made it so easy. And I had such a great time. At the end, I said, hey, can I call you next week and learn more about this podcasting stuff? Because I didn't know what a podcast was before that. And so we had a good talk, and he told me what I needed to do. And I knew how good thanking people every week made me feel when I was typing out the message. And I saw how they felt because they would text me, call me, email me, write me, say, thank you so much. And so I said, what if I combine my 40 years in the business? I know a lot of people. People seem to like it. And so I started reaching out to people to say, hey, if I did a podcast and this was the thing, would you be a guest? And they started saying yes, much to my surprise. So I have to thank them all for trusting me with their stories, right? Because it's very personal. And, we're 130 episodes into this thing now, and it's just been a blast. So that's really kind of how I always felt I was full of gratitude, and I thought I did a pretty good job of thanking people. But over the last 2.5 years doing the show and now speaking to companies about how to infuse gratitude into their cultures, I'm really just, learning all of this gratitude stuff. And it's been a great little, I call it my second act, right? Because my first act was 40 years in the business. My second act is this Tuesday Thanks and Leeds Hospitality.
It's interesting to see, like since you started this Tuesday Thanks podcast and now you're coming to the other side, right, of hospitality, the hospitality industry, what have you seen shift in these last few years in the industry, or with just people you're speaking to?
Well, obviously the easiest thing to see is the whole change in the workforce, right? And, you know, in the hospitality world, it's hard to work remote. and it's hard to work from home because you can't serve 300 people dinner if you're not there to
No.
serve 300 people dinner. So, seeing how the hospitality business is shifting to say, okay, which positions can we accommodate this new work from home? How do we use AI? Right. So, AI is great for a lot of back of house functions and marketing and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, the hospitality business is about personal connections. And that personal connection is just so important. And I look at gratitude with the lens that it's one more tool in your wellness toolbox. And you want people who are working with people to be in a good frame of mind. So I see that challenge of this labor shortage, trying to convince people that hospitality is a great industry to be in, and seeing how that's going to change and what's going to be next. There's going to be some levels of brands that will never allow a robot in their hotel to serve food, but there's going to be other brands where that's perfectly acceptable. If you look at the airlines, nobody enjoys flying anymore because it's very impersonal. But we've adapted to the fact that you're going to check in online, you're going to use your phone for your boarding pass, that the only person you're going to come in contact with for 1.5 seconds is the gate agent and then the flight attendant. I think the hotel business has to figure a happy medium as to how much is technologically handled and how much is still personal.
And where, because you give, you're doing all these corporate wellness courses, you're helping people just, infuse gratitude within their organizations. And what are you noticing in these organizations, in work culture, in employee engagement? What are you noticing?
Well, again, so, outside of the hospitality industry, there's the big push to return to work. And one of the interesting things they're talking to some clients and other folks is how do we bring the hospitality model to a corporate environment where it's never been before? So, some companies are doing it really well, and some companies don't know what to do or how to do it. And so it's bringing those little things that we do naturally in hospitality to a corporate office in terms of maybe having a concierge available, being able to do the dry cleaning there, having a gratitude board, all of these things that we do naturally in hospitality, bringing into those. In the hospitality companies that I'm working with, they're just trying to, again, use gratitude as that one more tool in the toolbox of employee recognition, employee appreciation. And if the senior leadership firmly believes in it, then it'll permeate all the way down because we can help them uh, with creating programs where their leaders we help them do daily actionable gratitude items. And it seems simple, and it is simple. I mean, I'm not a rocket science here. I'm just a dumb hotel guy, as I like to say. But if the team see the leader practicing gratitude on a daily basis, that's going to permeate all the way through the organization. And that's when you start getting an organization that has a happier workforce. You have better operational continuity and innovation from the people that are there. You have less turnover. You become the employer of choice. Profitability goes up. All of those things happen. And I'm not saying just from gratitude, but it's just one more tool in that toolbox to help you get there.
Here's a bit of a curveball, Brian. In our industry, as leaders, we're always teaching our middle managers that some wellness managers tend to be on how to give thanks, to say thank you to someone for the work, give them that positive feedback. And sometimes it does look as it's not genuine.
Hmm.
It's and a thank you for doing that. It's kind of almost a robotic response, if I'm being probably slightly harsh using those words. But how do we make it seem genuine? Because if it's not done in a genuine way, surely the impact of that gratitude does not permeate through the ranks,
Right.
down the
Well,
ranks.
Exactly. Like with anything, you have to be authentic, right? And the team will know if you're an authentic, but they'll also know if you're an authentic, ladder climber and all those things as well. So I think the more that you can educate leaders on the benefits of gratitude and what that will do and the science of gratitude and the data behind gratitude, the more you can educate them about it, the more it becomes authentic to themselves. And if you can give them the tools to practice gratitude daily, other than things just by saying thank you, right? And again, the education thing is gratitude doesn't have to be, and I'm going to use an American term here. It doesn't have to be Thanksgiving level gratitude every day, right? And it can be the small things, simple thank yous, but just planning your day with some gratitude. We give them tidbits of advice to, a handwritten thank you note once a day to one person. If you think about yourself, I mean, I'm going to show you something. This is a thank you note that I got from a participant at one of my sessions that I still hold, as you saw right here, because it's so important to me that someone took the time to handwrite a thank you note. The thought has to go into it, the time has to go into it. This means the world to people. So if you can show that to a leader and say, hey, if you do a handwritten note once a day to somebody, it's going to go a long way and it's going to build that, hey, this leader truly is thankful. Because did you see how I smiled? You
Yeah.
just automatically, because that's how it can improve that mental wellness is by doing those things. So we've developed a bunch of different things that we suggest they do on a daily basis. And that's, I think, how you build that authenticity is through education and showing them something like that. You saw how naturally I just lit up because, and I'm sure the things going on in my brains right now are at a plus because of that.
I also wonder because, I've been studying a lot about reading about employee engagement, employee happiness, where well-being comes. And obviously, there is all this, a lot of material out there, particularly in the life coaching industry, NLP, where they're talking where each employee is also the owner and accountable for their own happiness and their
Mhm.
own well-being. And what is your experience in teaching them gratitude just between other employees, not even going upwards to your managers, but just amongst, like in the wellness area, therapists saying thank you to, the spa attendant, or we saying thank you to, room service who are coming in, serving our clients when we need. Do you actually also work with gratitude at that level?
I have not gotten down to that level, but my hope is by virtue of dealing with the leadership teams, that level will see what the leaders are doing and therefore pick up on that. So for example, if the director of housekeeping or if the spa manager has her or his stand-up meeting, I don't know what they call it in the spa industry, but the
Yeah, the
daily
daily
stand-up meeting,
briefings.
the daily briefing meetings, and they start that meeting with a gratitude item every day, starting with something, then all of the massage therapists and all the others are going to see that and it's going to permeate. My hope is that it permeates into their daily life. And so that maybe when, they're sitting around the dinner table later at night, they start a conversation with their family about, oh, I had such a great day and I'm so thankful that X, Y, and Z happened. And so then it just kind of starts permeating into your natural everyday thing. And again, not Thanksgiving Day level, but just small, start with small things.
Given all the wisdom you've had, and obviously you've tried this, you're practicing it and you're implementing it. If you had to go back in time, given the knowledge you have today, directing all these hotels, being in the weeds of operations, what would you do differently, knowing what you know today about gratitude?
Yeah. Like I said, I think, I'm Canadian. And so we Canadians do two things. Number one, we say sorry for everything. If you've ever met a Canadian, we always just say sorry. Um, You may bump into me in the mall and I'll say sorry. That's just what we do. And the other thing is we say thank you. I really do believe as Canadians we do that. So I've always felt, like I said earlier, that I had a good life of gratitude, that I use gratitude. There's a saying that, having gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present for someone and not giving it. So I hope throughout my career and my life, I've expressed gratitude, probably not as much as I should have. So I think if I went back and looked at it, I really would have loved to have a daily gratitude sheet, which we've developed on a thing that I'm not trying to sell here, but we've developed as part of the presentations I do, because that would have really pushed me further into ensuring that I was doing 4 to 5 gratitude things a day for the employees and the teams that I was leading. So I think having something a little bit more structured and as a reminder would have been very helpful for me.
Yeah, just listening to you, I was like, it's just fascinating you're doing this work and these tools are available because I have this type A personality. I was in my previous life, I was in Goldman Sachs. So I have quite a strong personality and it's very performance driven. And it's because I demand that from myself. And that, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And that filtered to my teams also. It's obviously now hindsight has 2020 vision. At that moment, you don't see it. And I can't help but think if I was given those tools at that time, it would have probably been kind of game changing and also eye opening. I read this book from Dan Sullivan, Gap and the Gain. When you're constantly looking at what you've not yet achieved instead of what you have achieved as a team. And I think gratitude, just focusing on all the good things that are already being done, what the team is actually working on, what has been achieved. It sounds simple, but the power behind that simple act and the intention that goes behind that simple act is definitely the effects are, I can only imagine the impact it has on teams. And I just wish that, when I was way back, in the day to day and not too long ago in that situation, thinking if I had that tool, that would be a change in kind of perspective because you still have to perform, you still have to deliver to budget, and everyone gets that. No one wants to do a sloppy job at the end of the day. But it's also that how. And sometimes just, as you said, recognizing someone, they feel seen. And if you feel seen and you feel appreciated, that's far more important than a paycheck.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the other thing that I found interesting, kind of diving into this gratitude a little bit more, is there's so many studies out there about gratitude and the workplace. And, there's studies all over, American Psychological Association, Harvard Business Reviews. One of the things that I always refer back to is there's a company called Glassdoor. I don't know if you're familiar with
I've
it.
heard of it. Yeah.
And you can say what you want about it. Some people say, well, people only go on there to complain about their jobs and stuff. But the great thing about Glassdoor is they have exposure to a huge number of employees. And one of the questions was, would you work harder for a more grateful boss? Now, that has no animosity in it whatsoever, right? So it's a very good, plain question. And 81% of employees said they would work harder for a more grateful boss. So if you're a boss or a leader, think about that for a minute.
Mm.
If you can infuse gratitude in the 81% of your team, so if you got a team of 10 people, 8 of them are going to work harder for you. And who wouldn't like that? And so it's those kinds of things that I'm learning about how to imply. And then the cool thing about Tuesday Thanks is I've had some phenomenal leaders. I've been so blessed with people saying yes. And Jeff Bellotti, who is the CEO of Wyndham worldwide, he had arguably the best quote I've heard. And I'm going to kind of butcher it probably, but it goes something to the effect of, listen, Brian, you've got to remember as a leader that the higher that you climb the ladder, the higher you go, honestly, you have less impact on a day-to-day basis of the performance of the company, right? Because you're working on so many big projects and so many big things that the actual running of the company is done by teams. And he said, you've got to remember as a senior leader to thank those teams daily because they're the ones making the company successful. It's not you anymore. You're kind of the figurehead. And I know I apologize, Jeff. I'm not saying it as well as you do. He's a much more intelligent and well-spoken man than me, but it holds so true. And I thought about that for a long time because I remember my career and the higher I got, the farther away from the day-to-day activities that is making your company successful you get. So you do have to start thinking and you do have to manage differently. So again, just some observations from some of these chats I've had.
Yeah, it's very powerful. It's so interesting because obviously when you're climbing up the ranks, you just want to do a fantastic job. You want to deliver fantastic results. And obviously you are learning the ropes as you're climbing. And sometimes you just forget the responsibility that is involved to be a true leader. And it's sometimes these small little gestures that have such a profound impact. And I think the more we implement that in the hospitality industries, that's the industry where I am right now, and wellness, I I can just see that having a huge impact on our businesses. And where do you see the industry going forward? So, in the hospitality industry, it is quite interesting. You said earlier on that you're going out of the hospitality industry and they want to bring the hospitality model in it. And we're in our industry, and sometimes we don't see what we have in our own backyard, but we're still having so much challenges to retain talent, to attract talent. It's no longer that sexy industry or that safe industry we were pre-pandemic. So where do you see us going from now, the short to the midterm to the long term? And are there any spanners in the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to being open to new ideas on how to run hotels and run hospitality related businesses as it relates to two things. Number one, labor, and number two, this new world of AI and technology. Because, as I said earlier, there's some brands that it'll be fine to use impersonal machines to do 90% of the work. But there's no way at a five-star luxury resort, people are going to want to check in with a computer and all of that. They're going to want to have that personal interaction. So I see that as really the thing that we have to figure out is how do we make all of that blend together and be open to forget the old world, right? I'm an old guy. I've recently spoke at NYU to some kids on a leadership class. And it's so funny because I'm talking about things that we used to do. Yeah, for example, Y2K. I had a thing about talking about how we handled Y2K, which was that thing where 1999 changed into 2000 and they thought the world was going to come to an end because computers didn't know how to go from a nine to a zero or something. I don't know what it was. And you just realize we have to continue to innovate the way we think about how this new group of leaders are coming up through university and experience and how do we make that industry attractive to them so that they want to learn more quicker and they want to change positions more quickly. In the old days, I worked for Four Seasons. Back in the day, you had to do the same position at three different properties before you would be considered for a promotion. That can't work anymore, right? So you have to look at, okay, how do we set up these people for success by changing the model? They don't have to be subject matter experts in each discipline. Let's just get them to touch on it and keep them moving and keep them improving, and provide, we have to look at the pay structure. We have to look at the benefit structure. How do we help them with all of these things? So I think figuring out the labor part for us in the hospitality world, because that's what the majority of it is really key to that. And the AI thing, it can do amazing things with inventory systems, recipe management, invoicing, all of those things, which if you allow that to do it, that will free up your time to take care of your employees, take care of your guests, the things that really matter. And so it's like invest in it now so that you can do better, I think. So I know it's kind of a rambling answer, but I think those are some of the things that we have to really look at because they're forecasting, for example, this Thanksgiving here in America to be the busiest travel Thanksgiving ever. So people want to travel. People want to and it's all about the experiences now. It's not just about going somewhere. It's like, what am I going to do when I'm there and things of that nature. So it's changing. It's not going away, and we just have to adapt to the new way and be open for that.
Yeah, and I think, hospitality is a well-oiled operational machine. And that has its positives and its negatives. It got us to be those machines that really worked well, operational machines that had a very solid return on investment. And we had teams that would go the extra mile for us. However, things have changed, and that well oiled operational machine needs to be dismantled and a new one needs to be created. I mean, we've seen the Blackberries happen in the industry, we've seen Kodak and Blockbuster, Netflix coming in. So, I think if we don't innovate, we will be left aside, but the industry will continue without us.
Well,
Because,
yeah,
as you said,
exactly.
people will be traveling, people want to visit hotels, people want those experiences. But I think there needs to be we can't manage using the old system as a base. We have to construct it from ground up. And it
Mhm.
will be done inevitably with the future leaders. That will be done. So it's quite interesting to see that. And Lassie, to start wrapping up, what advice would you give, for example, my spa and wellness managers watching, or even hotel GMs? What advice would you give them now in this new world of management?
Well, it's nothing again, nothing earth-shattering. I always say the same thing is to continually improve your leadership skills, to look back and see what you've learned and what you've seen other leaders do, and continue to I always made my decisions, and I learned this fairly early on in the career, answering one simple question is what are we doing as it relates to any situation? How does it answer three questions? How does it benefit the guest? How does it benefit the employee? And how does it benefit the owner? Because at the end of the day, those are our three key stakeholders. And if whatever you're trying to do benefits all three stakeholders, do it and do it well. If it only benefits two, keep working on it. And if it's only going to benefit one of those three, throw it away and start over. Break it down and do something new because that'll never succeed. So I think putting that emphasis on those three stakeholders and really now focusing a little bit more on the employee well-being, however you want to define well-being, to attract talent and have them provide the best possible service is so key now. And you've got to spend time doing it. You've got to work on it and you've got to continually learn. And to your point that you said earlier, you can't rely on the old ways of doing things,
No.
right? And so you just have to be aware of what's going on out there in the industry. And then one of the things we've never done well, I think, in the hospitality world is embrace technology. We've
No.
we've we've always been slow to the dance in embracing and accepting technology because it's very costly. And we're not a very high margin business. We're not tech startups. We don't make billions of dollars in the first 2 years. We work really hard to get, a GOP of 30%. That's huge for us. But at the bottom line, it's not near that. So embrace technology, continually learn and be open and ask for help and look at what other people are doing and kind of talk to them. I've always found in our industry, we're not competing against each other. We are in general terms, but I remember going to Tampa. I moved to Tampa to run an airport hotel. I'd never run an airport hotel. The first thing I did was I reached out to every general manager at the airport and said, I've never done this before. What do I need to know? Not one of those general managers refused to talk to me. They said, hey, come on over for lunch. We'll talk. We'll bring you up to speed on how to do this. And that's the great thing about the hospitality industry. We're competing, but we're not competing directly to beat you. We're competing, I think, to have a great time. So those are things I always urge people, reach out. Because that's a perfect example of they could have all said, what are you crazy? I'm not going to tell you how to run your hotel. You'll be better than me. And it wasn't that. They said, come on over. We'll talk about it. We'll teach you the airport business.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the better every hotel does, the more guests will come to all of them, right?
Hmm.
It's like, cooking for the whole village or something like that. You're getting everyone to enjoy the feast instead of
Yeah.
just bringing it to your area, which is so important. And Brian, you do amazing work that has a huge impact in people's lives. If people want to work with you, reach out to you for you to give them one of your courses or your workshops, how can they reach you?
The easiest way is I'm all over LinkedIn. I have a website for Tuesday Thanks. I have a website for Leeds Hospitality Group. I have a LinkedIn page for each of them. The LinkedIn is, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, probably too much. But that's usually the best way to get a hold of me, just through that, and then we can go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brian. You've been a wealth of wisdom. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great chatting.